Hello, welcome to another video from the Gray Spectrum channel. Specifically, this video will be aimed at women and more particularly at left-wing women, something I once was. Regardless of you thinking that I am nothing but a gender traitor for being deeply dependent on male opinion, that's okay. I don't mind. I accept that you criticize me, that you insult me in the comments, that you develop your reasoning. It's all fine. I am completely open to that. The only thing I ask of you is to watch this video until the end because I will present to you a phenomenon from a bias, a perspective that no one has presented to you yet. So stay until the end. Imagine a serial killer, a serial murderer who has such an uncontrollable desire to kill that he has to beg for his own imprisonment. Otherwise, he will continue killing. He is 35 years old and is a virgin, and his favorite victims remind him of his mother, who was a prostitute. Young, brown-skinned, short, single mothers, easily understood as misogynistic nowadays. Could this man, to some extent, not be a victim of his own genetic condition with antisocial traits and therefore a propensity for criminal behavior, which was triggered due to a deeply traumatic upbringing in a broken home? Plausible, I believe so. For example, the so-called violence gene, MAOA, which we all have, produces an enzyme that regulates neurotransmitters like serotonin and dopamine. Those who have the low activity variant of this same gene tend to be more impulsive and aggressive, especially if they are male. But pay attention, this gene alone does not generate the behavior. The family and social environment count a lot, and in safe context, the tendency practically does not manifest. So there we have a clear example of how genetics creates the disposition, but not the destiny. But the provocation is, what choice did someone born with the variant of this gene in a violent environment have? None. The question is, do you would feel so sympathetic and be so condescending with this man, easily understood as misogynistic, a killer of brown women, poor single mothers, in the same way that you sympathize and are morally condescending with those gang members up on the hill who are now being killed by the police? I highly doubt it. It's understandable to imagine that, in fact, you would wish for this guy, this misogynist, hater of young women, single mothers, to be dismembered and thrown into a mass grave like a pauper. On the other hand, racism, social inequality, trauma, and lack of opportunities would have turned countless innocent young people into faction members who would have revolted or reacted against a system that offered them no other alternative, except for stealing a worker's cell phone at 5 in the morning at a bus stop just to satisfy their hunger. Close your eyes. Now imagine the most vile, cowardly, or destructive behavior or act, whether individual or collective. Did you imagine it? Well, know that even this act, individual or collective, vile, cowardly, or destructive, can be traced from an anthropological, neuroscientific, psychological, economic, philosophical, religious, or parental perspective, and by this logic, no one should be imprisoned. Now, if you are a penal abolitionist, that's fine. This doesn't make sense to you, but if you're not, consider that not even the Maria da Penha law should exist, much less be in effect today. After all, these aggressors of women may also have had a stressful and traumatic life, triggering mood disorders or other antisocial behaviors. No one is born, grows up, matures, gets a girlfriend, and thinks, I'm going to start being a woman abuser. All our actions are traceable, explainable, and eventually also interpretable in a way that can mitigate how we will deal with these same actions. But I ask again, does that mean they were innocent? Should they be acquitted? Of course, I'm not saying they should be killed, except if they are armed and confront the police. However, due to cognitive dissonance, these same feminists, and in this case, it could be you who are watching me, are much more merciless with people who are much more harmless, such as, for example, incels, or even with their abusive ex boyfriends who at most called them bitches and sluts during a fight on WhatsApp. I know, I agree, this is unacceptable, but the difference in treatment is visible. The incel may have suffered isolation from the pandemic, been abandoned by the father, neglected by the mother, while she spends the whole day on social media showing off in lingerie, bikini to strangers on the internet, or changing boyfriends as if she were changing underwear, in addition to being bullied at school for being ugly, poor, mixed race, or physically disabled. This is the reality of many of these young people, and it is precisely these young people who, in theory, would deserve much more of our compassion and leniency than these faction members. Or do you think that these young people who spend the whole day at home with no future prospects are tall, white, handsome, and rich men? These young people, folks, are mostly black and mixed race who daily live with disorder, family disarray, and trash around their own homes. Of course, not to mention the shootouts. This perception that incels are tall, white, handsome men only corresponds, or at least tries to correspond, to a fixation on a type, a stereotype of an enemy. And this enemy has to necessarily be a man, white, tall, strong, straight, etc., even if it doesn't make logical sense within the fiction itself. How would he have these numerous other characteristics that don't even correspond to a person of privilege? If this man is tall, white, rich, handsome, good looking, successful, who has prospered in life, he is not going to be an isolated man who spends the whole day at home, whining, suffering as if no one wants him. We know what the truth is. You know it very well. His life is much easier than that of these young people who often express feelings like inadequacy, frustration, helplessness, self-hatred, and especially anger. So imagine that these young people do not have a good family structure to support them, and also do not have access to good psychology professionals who offer tools to deal with all these negative feelings. But it can still get worse. Many of these young people are neighbors of these faction members. They are neighbors of these individuals with controversial morality or behavior. And not rarely, women ride on the back of these men, going up and down, up and down. And when they get beaten, they go back to them. When their heads are shaved, they go back to them. And then imagine the mind of this 13, 14, 15-year-old teenager when they see a Twitter feminist, white, middle class, saying that it's absurd, abject, disgusting, and repulsive, worthy of criminalization when a construction worker whistles at an unknown woman passing by on the street. But they defend criminals who kill hundreds of women and see that I recognize all the cognitive biases that hinder the precise analysis of society, which lead these young people to mistakenly conclude that most women are really attracted to thugs, delinquents, and criminals. No, that's false. And the best way to observe this is reality. It is the population composition of a society where the majority of men are not delinquents. And this was also generated because of female sexual selection. Women have chosen actively and deliberately over thousands and thousands and thousands of years to relate to socially adjusted men with pro-social behavior. But this type of argument generally feminists will not use. Why? Because they are afraid of nature, they are afraid of biology, they are afraid of analyzing facts through perspectives other than exclusively socio-constructivist ones. But you will fall behind and will continue to fall behind until you start rolling up your sleeves and recognize and analyze and see the truth as it is, not as you would like it to be. Besides, you are fixated on the wrong targets. Your enemies are those faction members, those hill traffickers who date young people of 13, 14, 15 years old. And if it were, I don't know, any member of a right-wing political party, for example, you would have no problem calling them a rapist, abuser, pedophile. The faction members, when they receive a no, when they are rejected by these young women who refuse to get involved with them for drugs, alcohol, or money, they kill them. They murder these young women. And do you know why? Because the morality of these men is profoundly patriarchal and much more primitive, archaic, which is expressed through force, brute force, and coercion. The respect they receive from society also depends on how they are treated and received by the women of that same community. And if they are or feel disrespected by women, they consider an extension of their status in society, they are punished. They murder these young women. What is there of communist, progressive, that is worthy of compassion, condescension, pity, or understanding? These are our enemies. These are the men who do not respect you. These are the men who treat you like objects because that is how they see you. To us, I don't believe in free will. Okay, not much. But still, it's not a good social mindset for us to govern our society because it discourages, depersonalizes, or at least dissociates individual responsibility from what people actually do. This is not good. It makes them resign themselves to their own actions, resign themselves to certain circumstances. So, strictly speaking, I don't believe it. But if it doesn't work for one, it doesn't work for anyone. If it works for one, it works for everyone. If some people are judged as if free will existed, so should others, even if they don't necessarily fit the stereotype of a minority victim, and vice versa. In general, I don't like to see or treat anyone as a victim, especially groups in general. But among these three groups I mentioned here, the toxic ex-boyfriend, the incel, and the faction member is definitely the least victimized group here. Or even if it is a victimized group, hypothetically, it is the one that creates the most victims. And part of this condescension occurs because a narrative is constructed that creates numerous possible hypothetical situations that could have happened if reality had been different. Okay, I agree that countless people could simply never have entered into crime if they had been born, I don't know, in Switzerland, had different parents, or studied in different schools. But the point is that then they wouldn't even be themselves anymore. They would be different people. Considering reality as it is, we can conclude that we should judge people based on what they actually do and not based on something they could do or something they could have been. They are what they are, regardless of the reasons that made them become what they became. Just imagine if a person won the Nobel Prize for something they might have discovered in chemistry. Imagine a person winning a first place medal in an Olympics for almost competing. It's absurd, right? And what is the reasonableness of acquitting a person of a crime that, in a certain alternative situation, they would not have committed? Accept it. There are people who are, in fact, irredeemable and they do not deserve to live in society, like the misogynistic killer. I hope you enjoyed this video. Subscribe to my channel, share, comment a lot, and of course, recommend it as much as you can to all the leftist girls you know. Something I once was too.